Hey everyone, yeah, got my clicker. Um, yeah, so this is obviously me. Like, it actually isn't what it looks like. That's actually my cousin, and I always say, like on school visits, that there was like a queue of people lining up like that, like all the way out the door. But it's not true. My cousin was tying her shoelace, and then we caught a picture of it. And then yeah, so I grew up in Peckham, and I am an author by day and a pedestrian by night. Um, but I guess I'm also an author by night and a pedestrian by day sometimes. And then that last bit, shortlisted for the Carnegie Award, which means I've done something right. That is actually I was kind of like obliged to put that there by my publicist. But yeah, that I don't like saying that last one. And then, all right, yeah, this is my first book, Study for This, and it is a story about Growls, who is like a terrible MC. Like he wants to be a rapper, but he's actually really rubbish at it. And he wants to impress a girl he has a crush on. And so he live streams like one of his awful rap performances, and his mum kind of like bursts in, and she interrupts him, like holding up a pair of like his pooey underwear, and like everyone online sees it, and he becomes a bit of a pariah at school. And he meets Siobhan, who obviously like inspired by an Irish person I knew. And she's like quite this kind of like incredible kind of like boss figure, and she teaches them quite a lot about life as well. And yeah, so it's a story about music and friendships and stuff. Yeah, so I made a few notes because I'm a bit nervous. This is my first time in Ireland, and yesterday I had like my first Guinness, followed by I think my first 5 Guinnesses. And so yeah, like the language in Study for This. So like he like Growls, his English is quite awful, and there is so that it starts off with quite a lot of slang, and he kind of develops quite a strong bond with his English teacher, who kind of mentors him while he's at a kind of like dark point in his social life at school. And the more kind of like throughout the story, the more English lessons he has, the more his general grammar and punctuation improves. And so I'm always like quite grateful, especially when kids who come and get a book signed and they say like, oh, like, is it true? Like, because I noticed that, you know, his English is better at the end. Did you do that on purpose? And I'm like, well, yeah, of course. Yeah, it's my job as a writer. And also, like, so through no kind of like I can, because I did creative writing at uni, and so I can write silly little poems and stuff. But rapping is very, very, very different, because I have no musical ability at all. And I was telling someone yesterday that my friends even staged like an intervention to stop me from singing in the car, because they couldn't bear it. And so where I can write like little poems and stuff, like I can't rap at all. And so, obviously, as his English improved, so did his musical ability have to improve. And so I got actual MCs from London, and my little brother, who's a musician as well, he does lots of production. And there's lots of rapping in the book, and they kind of analyzed and kind of like doctored the music in the book to actually make it flow, to actually show some kind of progression. And so, yeah, I guess like something I might go a bit off topic because I waffle because I'm nervous, innit? But One thing that I always like hearing from other authors is what came first between like the character or the theme or the plot. Because I know some writers say like, oh, I really wanted to write a book about friendship, and then it all came together after that. And or someone will say, oh yeah, I really wanted to write, about, I don't know, Pompeii, and so I created a narrative around that, or a film that was dreadful. And so with me, it was always like voice-led, and so I have the voice in my head first, and then I kind of think of like really silly like conversations, to a point where like I can't believe it's my job. Like, I kind of sit on the bus and on the train, and I let my mind wander, and then the that sounds odd, like the voices in my head, like the characters are all talking to each other, and I kind of like scribble it down, and so I always have like the character in my head first, and so with Growls, with this character, like it's kind of like inspired directly. Like I lived in Paris for a while, like in my early 20s. And I had an aunt who would always call me, like her nickname for me was tête en l'air, which means like head in the clouds. And so like Growls, like that was kind of my first thought was he has, like that's exactly him, he has his head in the clouds. And so because he is like quite silly, like he doesn't know a lot about the world. I'm trying to think of some, like, he says stuff that's like really like outrageous. Like he talks about the battle at Waterloo Station, and he says that Queen Elizabeth II was only called that because she married her second cousin. And like he's got so many like really silly throwaway lines, and so that was really fun to come up with, and that voice kind of, we built a narrative around that. And so because I had the voice kind of like fully locked in, I was then able to play a game of what if. So I've got this character, and what if he meets someone who's a total opposite of him, which is Siobhan. And Growls is quite a lot of like bravado, masking his vulnerability. She's kind of the opposite, she's quite vulnerable, but there's a really, really big like hidden strength beneath her, like, and so it was juxtaposing these two characters together and thinking like what kind of scenarios can I get away with these two, and actually I think I can do a reading because I get nervous and it will help me kill time. Thank you. So yeah, Growls, he goes to his first Italian restaurant, which is kind of funny because I've just had my first Irish experience, and so we're kind of twinning. Okay, so this is Growls and Siobhan in an Italian restaurant. Okay, so I'll start with the waiter interrupts us to bring olives and toothpicks. I think he's trying to finesse me. We didn't order this. I ain't paying for them. Siobhan giggles nervously and tells me it's okay, but I don't want to pay for something I didn't order. The waiter says they're complimentary. I don't know what that means, so he gives them to us for free. All right, cool. I feel a bit silly now. Siobhan tells me to try an olive, so I pick one up with my fingers. It feels like a plastic grape. I pop it in my mouth and chew it like a starburst, and I almost break a tooth. There's a stone in it. Yo, what the heck is this? I spit it out onto the plate. Siobhan's properly laughing now. You don't like it? It tastes like deodorant. Yeah, that stuff is disgusting. No wonder the waiter gave it to us for free. That guy is a snake. Siobhan's happily eating away, though, still laughing at my reaction. I can't lie, this is actually kind of fun. I can feel my phone vibrating in my pocket, but it's probably just another prank call from the dentist. My mood kind of dips when the food comes out, though. The prosciutto isn't even cooked. It's just raw meat. what am I lying? I know I smell like Lynx Africa, but I don't have the same dietary requirements as Simba. Siobhan happily eats the raw alien meat and olives while we argue about whether Nando's is better. We went there for Adrian's birthday. Like, Nando's has an actual spice scale. You can't measure how spicy Italian food is when there's no chili scale for information. And for the record, I get extra hot. Lemon and herb is for waste men who ride a push scooter to work. The pizza finally arrives, and I want to throw it across the room. This thing is thinner than the iPhone 14. There's no bread to it. And what is that? Leaves on a pizza. What is this? Kew Gardens. And an egg. Who puts an egg on pizza? I ain't ever going to Italy if all they eat is raw ham and fertilized garden center pizza. Siobhan's laughing at my reaction again. She can eat all the food, and I'll just sit here huffing and puffing like a free Billy Goat's gruff. All right, so that's kind of like, yeah, that's a bit of a taster. And like, one thing that I do enjoy about studying for this is that I can open it on any page, and there's like at least a few gags like per page. But then, like, if I'm taking it back to building character, he is kind of like a lovable oaf, I guess, but in like the nicest way, and he's got such a big heart, and he didn't start like that, and so I'll get onto it in a bit, but that is direct involvement from the editors, and that's something that I'll talk about in terms of building character as well. But yeah, so that's Growls and Study for this, and like it gets sillier like as it goes along. Like, yeah, I do love that book. Thank you. And yeah, so like if I'm thinking about the evolution of characters as well, like Growls' mum was originally going to be the main villain, which was a bit of a joke because of my relationship with my mum, I guess. And like there was a line that was cut out of the book where he says, "Oh, most kids check under the bed in case of being haunted by monsters, whereas I check under the bed to see if my mum's going to pop out and scare me." And so like that was a bit too far-fetched, and so we had to ground everything back in reality. And I do get that my reality wasn't everyone else's, and so having your mum haunt you from under the bed isn't right. Yeah, that wasn't great. And then so I can move on to King of Nothing, and this is the story of Anton. So again, like voice-led, this was quite. My publishers said, we want you to do the complete opposite of Steady for this. And obviously, like I was kind of heartbroken because I thought, like, oh, but Steady for this, like, it's so easy to write because, like, it's so fun and silly. And so it got me thinking, like, what is a complete opposite of Steady for this? And again, rather than the theme or a narrative in my head, I thought, well, the opposite of Growls, who is kind of happy-go-lucky and curious. Anton, who is this character, he's like cynical and grumpy. And like so from this cynical, grumpy character, again, I had to juxtapose him with someone who is, who's quite optimistic and quite soft. And so I was a huge fan growing up, like, I'm kind of showing my age. There was a film called She's All That, where they give like a character makeover, and it's I forgot his name, Sarah Michelle Gellar's husband, Freddie Prinze Jr. And then the girl just takes off the glasses, and suddenly like she's like the coolest person in the room, and it was so silly. But so I thought, like, if I do like a South London version, that could be quite fun, and that's something quite fun for me to write. Is this horrible school bully has his life saved by like the biggest loser at school, and as a way of thanking this kid, he gives the kind of like loser kid a personality makeover. he said, this is more realistic than, you actually being cool, so I need to reinvent you. And so that's most of the comedy in this book. And because I am generally not like grumpy or cynical, I have lots of grumpy, cynical people in my life. And my little brother, who like I'm always antagonizing him, and the way he reacts, like when I like poke him, is always so fun. And so I used his kind of like grumpy voice, and I have another mate, Abbas, who's always very kind of like responsible, and he's always moaning about stuff, rightly. Like during COVID, my mate's got a bit squiffy, and I thought it'd be fun to ride on the roof of a car. And he was the one who was like, "This is so silly, you're gonna die." Like, and so I've got like this kind of like responsible, almost kind of like moaning figure with like the grumpy, cynical little brother, and so I kind of like mash them together, and that's how Anton was kind of born. And so again, I started with the voice of Anton. And I thought, like, what? Now that I've got a voice, what story can I put him into? And weirdly, while I was writing down, the kind of silly back and forth set that Anton and Matthew had, because I did the dialogue and the punchlines before I even had a story. And a mate of mine who works with, kind of difficult or children in difficult circumstances, and he works in one of those schools, and he was saying to me that the teachers at that school were going to do an assembly on Andrew Tate, who was circulating at the time, and all these kids were kind of like bragging about it, and obviously like saying some of the horrible stuff that he says. And the teachers wanted to do an assembly on it, and then pulled out last minute because they were worried that if they tell a bunch of teenagers not to do something, then they're going to drive a whole bunch more kids to those videos. And obviously, like, this is kind of disturbing, because my own nephew and I had a cousin who was saying to me, like, "Oh, what do you think?" And I didn't say to them, like, this is disgusting, you need to stop. But I kind of just dismantled the conversation, of like, what does he say that is true? Like, because this was quite a disturbing one to do the research on, because I was sleuthing online and saying like, oh, okay, like, what is the argument for Andrew Tate? And not just him, but there's a whole bunch of YouTubers and someone even told me, like, you guys have a kind of, I don't know if it's libel, but a similar Conor McGregor, like, over here, who's got all this kind of, like, silly, fake masculinity, woman-hating kind of, like, persona. So I did say to my mate, like, okay, I need a way of bringing a kind of, like, antidote to the misogyny. If you guys can't do an assembly on it, let me see if I can write a book. And a bit like when you're hiding vegetables in baby's food, isn't it? And I do talk about school visits, like because honestly, it's so disturbing. And that, like I was saying earlier, like it's not just online anymore. And from doing school visits, like, you see these kids have like so little respect for like, especially their female teachers, and the way, like, all the homophobia and the way that they talk about, like, even the girls in their class and all that kind of stuff, and they use all this stupid, like, oh yeah, I'm a Sigma, I'm an Alpha, and all that. And I do tell them, like that's been debunked like a long time ago. Like, the Alpha isn't someone strong. I think the Alpha wolf is whoever leads to the most kills. So, yeah, if you're an alpha, it means you're the most intelligent, not the biggest and strongest. So that's stupid. And so, yeah, that is kind of how King of Nothing came about. And With King of Nothing, so I grew up watching Laurel and Hardy as a kid. And for because Laurel, I guess like if you have two Hardys, then it's just too serious and they're just gonna like hate each other, and then two Laurels would be like a bit like incessant, and so I like you need to have that back and forth, I think. And so Rouse was very much Laurel, and so I needed a Hardy kind of character with Anton. And so yeah, actually I do a short reading from this one as well. All right. So I was so worried about like running out of time, and now yeah. Okay, all right. So this is Anton, who's a bully, kind of like giving what he thinks is advice to Matthew on how to be cool. All right. So you got your notebook ready? I ask him. He nods enthusiastically and puts it on the table. Good. So we already spoke about fixing your image, finding ways to make sure you don't look like a Care Bear mixed with the kid on the Haribo packets. He smiles to himself, probably because he knows all the Care Bears and he's got one in mind. Yeah, I told Rochelle at school that I'm thinking of cutting my hair, and she said that if it's my idea and it brings me joy, then she'll support my decision. Rochelle, you spoke to Rochelle? My entire body immediately perks up for some reason. Don't worry, I didn't mention you, he's quick to reassure me. But yes, she and I are friends now. Man loves to talk Shakespearean, it's so unnecessary. Well, since when did this happen? Since the day that you burst into science class. She did say you can be a bit aggressive sometimes. And why the sudden interest in Rochelle? Huh? Sigh, he's so dramatic. Bruv, I didn't burst into anywhere. Stop describing me like I'm a firework. And how am I being aggressive? I never even said one word to you that day. I decided to ignore the other stuff. I guess you didn't have to say anything. Maybe your stance was aggressive. You know that 93% of communication is nonverbal. Sometimes I wish it was 100%. That would be amazing. We could communicate in sign language and purring noises. That's not the message I wanted her to take home from my comment. I hate it when my insults don't land. Actually, you know what? I'm trying to be more kind. Joshua's speech is still fresh in my mind. Plus, it's good for Matthew to chat to someone at school, even if it is at Smarty Pants and her squad of geeks. This could be good for him. It could be great for me. Hey, have you seen Wicked the Musical? He asks out of nowhere. I let the pause sink in, giving him time to truly reflect on whether or not I've watched Wicked the Musical. No, I eventually reply when he doesn't seem to be getting it. I'd rather skip barefoot on a cactus. Well, that would be easier. That would be an easier feat if you defied gravity, he chuckles to himself. Sometimes I literally feel like we're talking a different language. He should come with his own subtitles, which reminds me, if I'm going to keep training you, we need to talk about your speech. My speech, as in my articulation. He slaps his hand against his cheek and moans to himself. I know I should have accepted those elocution lessons last summer. Elocution lessons? How moneyed is this kid? I should start charging for these sessions. No, I remind myself, he saved my life. That's why I'm doing this. And so that is King of Nothing. And again, like as the character builds, he has influences in his life from being more open-minded and making female friends, and you know they have kind of like talks on what it means to be a misogynist, and you know I always like juxtapose it with like I contextualize it in like if it was a race thing, would this be racist? So when you say like, oh yeah, all girls do X and Y, if you said that about a certain race, would that be seen as racist? Obviously, yes. And so as the message sinks in, kind of like throughout the story, his character, he grows in strength and he learns to stand up to the other kids who kind of perpetuate these kind of like horrible messages. And hopefully not in you know kind of like super in your face way, but in a way that is I guess still funny enough for kids to not feel like they're being preached to. Okay, And then, sorry, I've never done this specific talk before, and so I don't know what's coming next. Building character. Most readers are human beings. Are we in this room human beings? Yes, technically we are. I don't know what I was thinking. Interviewing characters. Yeah, so this is. I'm fortunate enough to live alone, and so, like, I do the voices out loud, and so I'll kind of like sit on the couch and I'll write out my interview questions, and then respond in the voice. So I'll say like, you know, what do they sound like? And like, oh, they sound like this. Like, you know, so I'm proper like Golluming. And then so I interview all of my characters, and then like it's a bit like when I was at uni writing essays, and then you've always got the question at the top to kind of like refer to, just to make sure you're not waffling. I always have the answers to my characters' interview questions, to make sure that like their motivations are what they need to be, and they don't veer too far from that. But also, if the answers to these interview questions are exactly the same at the end of the book, then I've not done my job very well. And so, yeah, that's something I can't lose sight of character motivations. All right, cool. Right, what you know. So I guess I can read this out quickly. I wouldn't choose to write about maths genius because I'm bad at maths. Like lots of people say to me, like, how did you come up with this? And I always say, like, even the most absurd throwaway lines are stuff that happened. And I'm not very creative. I listen to other people's anecdotes, and also I have weird things happen to me and around me, and I just note them down. And so I'm not someone who can sit here and think of like the most amazing kind of like set pieces. I write kind of stuff that happens. So example, in Steady for This, there's a scene where he gets stuck in a pushchair. And again, the publishers were saying to me, like, like that pushchair scene was so weird. Like, how did you think of that? And the true story is, I was about 13, 14 years old, so I was way too old. And my mum would push my little brothers around in this pushchair, which had a really tight kind of like strap. And I remember it was so difficult that I thought, like, once I'm strong enough to undo this strap, then I'll know that, like, I'm a man, you know. And so, like, one day after school, I kind of strapped myself in, and obviously couldn't undo it. And it was like in the communal area of like the block of flats that we lived in. And I remember, like, it's so silly. Like, honestly, I thought like, I'm gonna starve to death. Like, I'm gonna die here. And so after writhing around, like, my logic, my 14-year-old logic was like, maybe I can slide up out of it, which I started doing, but then my belt buckle got caught. And so I thought, like, well, obviously I have to take off my trousers. And so, like, so I took my trousers off and kicked off my shoes, and so I was, like, I was in my little pants, like with little postman Pat, like, on the front, and so it started working. I started sliding up out of it, and the neighbor came out, and on the way downstairs and out the building, we made eye contact, and obviously I was still in my school uniform from the waist up, and it was so awkward and so horrible. And so years later, when the publishers are saying, like, you know what, can you expand on this scene? We need, you know, a bit of an awkward situation, like. And I thought, well, yeah, no, I've got like, So I can't take like a lot of credit for that kind of So it just harks back to write what you know, and like I'll give another one. There was a line, I'm not sure if it was in Steady for This or King of Nothing. I think it was Steady for This again. He says that, oh, I ain't ever felt this pathetic since a cockroach fell out my pocket. And the story behind that was I just moved into a new flat, and I didn't know what cockroaches were. And so I just thought like, oh yeah, there's like beetles and stuff running around this flat, like cool. A few weeks after moving into a flat, I caught a cold and went to the GP. And then when I got to the doctor's office and I walked in for a consultation, I pulled a tissue out to blow my nose, and a cockroach fell on the floor. And it landed like right in between me and the GP. And like he was disgusted. And he stared at it for a little bit, and he went, ugh, is that a cockroach? And then the thing started scurrying about, and he jumped up on his chair, and even though I was the one who was ill, he gave me a plastic cup, and I was scrambling around under his desk to like trap it. So that like made it into Steady for This, and there's so many of those like in both books. I'm running a bit out of time, and so like I can't. But write what you know is a big thing for me. Character building, conflict and change. I mean, this one is kind of like self-explanatory. Like I think I've answered this with the interviewing answers that have changed. If the answers are the same, because I need my characters to grow, especially if Anton in King of Nothing starts off in this kind of like weird, red pilly, misogynist kind of like space. He needs to change, and like same with Grouse, who's like quite difficult to understand. Like at first, I needed him to with Siobhan's help, turn into a bit more of a human being, which I'm glad he does towards the end. Laurel without Hardy, too much of one thing, silly or not sickles, becomes tiresome. And so this is, when I'm building my characters, I always, so the way I kind of like construct the book is that I think of the punchline, and then I build maybe like a paragraph or a chapter around that, and then obviously the book is kind of built around that. And so I'm always doing it in like reverse, where I'm starting like this from several little seeds and then see where they go. Authenticity, let's talk about it. Yeah, so I am like a little bit old, and I'm not part of the TikTok generation. But I do have cousins, and I eavesdrop on the train, because I don't think it's enough to throw random like innits and fams into stuff, because I think kids can see through that. But there was a rhythm, and like listening to kids on the train, and obviously like you kind of like hear there's almost a melody to how they talk, and it makes my life difficult because it keeps changing. And right now, like I say, because everyone's like, there's all these weird skibbities and stuff that they're getting from TikToks, and so I also have to evolve with them. But thankfully, I've got like quite a few cousins and nieces and nephews who are of that age, who can read through my work and say like, yeah, no, we don't see this. You're talking like you sound too old, and that kind of stuff. And so I always say like, yeah, make sure. Like you're not trying to mimic, it's more the melody. And yeah, so the role of editors, so I'm speeding through this now just because like Q&As and stuff, innit? My characters, I was saying to someone else earlier, like my entire job is just listening to people who know more than me. And I've been writing books for 2 years, and my editors have been doing it for 10 years, and I just listen to stuff they say, and if I didn't, Growls will still be unlikable. You know, and my editors had such a big hand in King of Nothing, in kind of like, they gave me so many resources and stuff to kind of counteract the misogyny that's circulating around in Anton's school. And so I think that is one of like my biggest strengths is listening and taking advice. Like I'm not really precious about anything. Like I just get to play around for a living. And I guess before we get to Q&A, like I do want to say like thank you to the CBI, because I think what you guys do is so important. And so yeah, I think shall I just call it and say Q&A? Yeah, all right.
Elena has the mic. I have a question. How did you get out of the pushchair in the end?
Like it is actually in the book. I after struggling for probably about half an hour, like I popped one knee out. So I got one knee out first, and then from there, like the rest was kind of like easy.
Nice.
Yeah.
The first knee is the one.
Yeah. Now for advice for anyone else, like yeah.
Any hands up?
Oh, that's me.
Oh.
Yeah, so I'm just going to kind of confirm myself as a stalker. Hi, Nathanael. I just want to say first that I sent my son the video, and he described it as rather spectacular, which is good because he often says things like skibbity and riz. So, you know, it's good that he brought out the good English for today. It's been alluded to before over the course of the conference and other conversations I've had with people that we're losing teen readers because there isn't enough content being made for them. And so I want to say thank you for writing these books, because they are shining lights in the big grey gap where books for young teenagers should be.
Oh. Thank you, but like as a bookseller, like you're also the one putting the books underneath, like giving the book, you know, you're deeding these books to kids. Yeah, I think your job is more important than mine. Like, I've written 2 books, whereas you're putting hundreds of books. Like, yeah, I think what you guys do is incredible.
Well, thank you, and I don't mind pushing books like this on teenagers at all. And I'm actually trying to push them on as many people here today. If you haven't read these books, you all should. And please go. Don't get in my way in the queue for signing, though, please. But my question was: you tackle massive topics like homophobia, child carers, changing parental relationships, like tricky parental dynamics, intergenerational living. I mean, I could go on and on and on, but they're actually like achingly funny, which is a tricky balance, and that's what I want to know. How do you achieve that balance between talking about really important things but not leaving anybody depressed and morose at the end of the book because they've had a really good laugh the whole way through?
Yeah, no, thank you. Like, I don't know if it's a cop-out, but I would say, like, firstly, like, the editors, I think, like, adding the emotional beats is something, because like incessantly funny is annoying, and incessantly like kind of like dreary and focused on difficult topics obviously is kind of like harder for I guess teenagers to get into, and so I have so much fun writing, and then the editors just say like throw in an emotional beat here and here and here and here. And I guess, and so it is that, like it's me kind of like just taking the advice from them, but also going back to the write what you know part as well. Like I like with King of Nothing, the whole misogyny, which is linked to the homophobia that I've seen in schools as well. Like it's all from that same space online, and so I saw it firsthand, and I thought like, well, I need to talk about this, like, because this is wild, like, and like, you know, my little brother is gay, and he got quite a lot of abuse in secondary school. And that is way before the days of Andrew Tate and the other people in that space. And so the fact that it's like gotten worse now is to me like shocking. And so it is a reflection on real life experience, but also kind of hopeful of how I want the world to be eventually, hopefully. Oh yeah.
So firstly, I'm a sex ed teacher in the UK, so I understand that having those tricky conversations with teenagers and trying to figure out how to work it in without telling them, hey, you're horribly wrong, and trying to have those conversations better. But the fact that Anton manages to stand up to his friends making those jokes is like the hardest thing to do, I think, in those situations. So it's amazing that you've included that. But my question was, we have films like She's All That, where usually the nerd is the protagonist and they're made cool. What do you think the advantages are of having the cool person as the protagonist and then the nerd as the sort of secondary character, like hearing the cool person's first-person perspective?
I think, like, it's... I really don't want to... And thank you for reading it, by the way, as well. I don't feel like I'm in a position to preach to anyone, but I can write characters that hopefully could see themselves in, and so a bit like I said about feeding the vegetables in, like I think if a teenager is full of this kind of like the similar bravado that Anton takes, and I think weirdly and sadly, Anton is probably more relatable than Matthew. Even though Matthew is like a gem of a character, and he does make me laugh a lot, and Matthew is actually based a lot more on myself as well. But it's sad that Anton is the one that I see more in schools. And so it was a way of kind of like feeding this information and like really hopefully like inspiring other kids to stand up to similar messages going around. You know, I think if they can relate to Anton, if I hook them in first, because Anton is I think he starts the book with like a scrap or something, and if kids are like, oh yeah, this character's so cool, that's a bit of me, and then over time he learns and you learn with him, there's this Netflix documentary with Zac Efron, and I was a big High School Musical fan growing up, and Zac Efron he's a bit like he's not very intelligent, and so as he's learning in this documentary, he's asking all the same questions that I would ask because I'm not very intelligent, and so I'm sitting there going like, yeah, good question, Zach, and because I'm already bought into it like before there's any character growth, I'm hoping that kids react similarly, that they get hooked in by how cool Anton is, and then over time they learn that the cool thing is actually empathy and emotional intelligence.
I have some compliments on the slider here. I'll run through them.
Yeah.
You were way too humble for someone so talented. This one. It's lovely. Have you ever done stand-up? And if not, can you please consider it?
No.
And another one here, a bit more serious. Thank you so much for talking to kids about misogyny. We need men to talk to other men, and as a parent, I'm grateful for you for creating space for that.
That's lovely.
Really nice.
Yeah.
And then related to that, you spoke about toxic masculinity in schools. Is it as grim as it appears, or do you feel that visits from people like you make a difference in the long run?
I think it's horrible. I don't know how much of a difference I make to anything, really. I think librarians I've seen are the ones on the front lines, and librarians, and obviously charities like yourselves, and I spend my life on the couch, with a laptop, and you guys are actually out putting stuff out, and booksellers as well, and so I don't know what kind of impact I'm having personally, but I know that the people who are peddling these books are the ones who are actually putting their money where their mouth is. And to answer the first part of the question, honestly, it's worse than it appears. Like when you get to like the disrespect that female teachers get, and they tell me like, especially in comparison to the male teachers, and I hear like homophobic slurs all the time, you know, and there's all this, you know, Andrew Tate, what you say like, oh, if you drink tap water, you're not a man, you have to drink sparkling water, and like, but like the most absurd, stupid stuff, you know, and because kids are impressionable, and I think you were saying yesterday, it's a radicalization, isn't it? And so, you know, rather than, you know, and there is a stigma attached to reading as well, and so English teachers who are encouraging these kind of books, like, and obviously not just mine, but any book that challenges the kind of like horrors of certain aspects of the classroom, I think, quite important. I don't know what impact I'm having, like, is the like honest answer to that. Yeah.
I have a couple more here. Did you always want to be a writer, and what was your journey to writerdom like?
Yeah, no, it was random. Yeah. The irony, so my journey to writerdom is I worked at McDonald's in Paris because I went there on a holiday, and because my mum's from Madagascar, and so they're French speaking, and so I have quite a lot of family out there. And so I worked at McDonald's in Paris, and then I came back to London, and then was like, oh, well, let me just work at McDonald's again because, you know, it's helping pay rent and stuff. And then I got bored of that and started working in a call center where I was receiving maybe 3 phone calls a day over an 8-hour day. And I loved it. And I think that's where I started writing to entertain myself and the other people at my desk. And so I'd write silly essays and poems and stuff. And then I thought, oh, you know what, like, I'm enjoying this. Let me see if I can do this at uni. And so I did creative writing at uni. And while I was there, I thought, well, it's so unrealistic that I'll ever be a writer. Because you know, everyone wanted to be the next, you know, Hunger Games and JK and you know, everyone was into Terry Pratchett and they were, and I was just sat there going like, well, no, like that's unrealistic. You know, I'm not going to be the next Beyonce just because I study music. And so I went into marketing instead. And then weirdly, so I did my creative writing degree to go into marketing, not even to become a writer. And then during COVID, I thought, oh, okay, well, let me at least finish something, you know. And so I finished it and then got a bit squiffy one night and sent it to a few agents. And then one got back to me and said, like, yeah. And then, you know, I had to be like, is this a prank? Are you going to ask me for money? And then publishers enjoyed it, and then I remember I got the news and I was just sat in the gutter outside my house like for a couple of hours staring into space, thinking like, you know, maybe I don't have to market anymore, like at least not for the next like year or so. And so that's how I got into writing. Yeah.
And then one last question: what are you working on now?
There's a book for 7 to 9-year-olds published by Little Tiger Stripes, and that's a kind of superhero story because I was really into comic books and I like superheroes are kind of loose, but they have what is technically powers in this one village, and while some of them have the power to like move mountains and some of them have colorful farts, and one guy turns invisible, but only when no one's watching. And one guy has got super optimism, and so it's kind of like a superhero story set in that world. And that was also really fun. And so that's coming out. I don't really know when because I don't check my emails scrupulously. I think that's in November, but. And then there's the American version of Steady for This, which was quite difficult because it's not just changing S's to Z's, like because there's so much like there's so many puns and stuff, and stuff that didn't translate. And so they were asking me so many questions like, oh, hey, what is bunda? And can you explain you know, like you have to get technical about stuff. And they even made me add a glossary. Which is because my granddad is very posh, and when he was reading study for this, he was, darling, I did rather enjoy it, but I do wish you had a glossary so I could understand. But yeah. So there is that, and then I've just been contracted for like another couple of these teen books. It just means I don't have to go back to marketing at least for another like handful of months, and I think that's probably hitting shelves in April. I think.
We'll keep an eye out for that. Well, you're still marketing. You're marketing the books, and you're here today, so well done. A huge round of applause for Nathanael. Thank you so much.
Thank you.